that I've noticed. Right before a chapter release that has gen regression perks for the killer, I noticed there's always been some kind of changes to gen regression in general, whether it be perks or mechanics like limited regression. Similar to what happened recently. Biggest major update recently was the limited regression for killers. And then the unknown chapter came out, which gives you 2 gen kicking perks. One is a regression and one is a terror radius. Let's see. Yeah, Chucky wasn't really. And the reason I think they do this again, I think they had a gen regression change right around these 2 chapters, if I'm not mistaken. And then we get machine learning, nowhere to hide, perks that are promoting gen kicking. So what I feel that's happening and that I've noticed is there's some kind of regression nerf or gen perk nerf for killers. And right that update, it's usually a mid-chapter update, right before the next chapter, and then the next chapter has a killer that has some kind of gen-related perk. And in this case, recently, it's been gen kicking perks and 1 regression. I feel that the devs, if we want to play into this whole pay to win, the devs nerf certain things that are major parts of the game's mechanics to ensure sales on the next chapter. Because when they nerf gen regression and then they come out with a chapter with a new gen perk, that chapter is more likely than not to be bought for the new perks. And this seems very illegal in a business sense, in a consumer rights type sense. Almost like EA's Battlefront 2 loot crates. Except for it's not gambling. It's literally causing a problem in the game to ensure you make sales on your next content release of your game. It's almost like that whole planned obsolescence that Apple was doing. Like, they sabotaged their fucking their update software to sabotage the hardware so you'd be forced to purchase the newest model of whatever phones you were using or whatever devices you were using. It almost seems like behavior's taking that in and doing the same thing when they sit there and they continuously attack gen regression and gen defense, and then all of a sudden their next chapter is selling perks in the chapter for the killer that has to do with gen defense, or at least making you have to kick a gen to get a effect out of it, similar to Unforeseen. But yeah, and the latest killer chapter plus the one of the major updates recently, not the Twins update or anything, but prior to that, was when it comes to game mechanics in the base game, was the limited regression. And then they sold perks that made you kick a gen for some effect. One is a gen regression perk. So yeah, I'm really feeling that pay to win isn't really the name I would call it. I would call it sabotaging the game to ensure sales on the next chapter release, especially for killers when gen defense is so needed in this game. They continue to fuck with it and nerf it and change it so that it's not as good. And then they come out with some new perks. Um, it's crazy to think about it, to be honest.